Hello and welcome to Strategy with Purpose, Integral Design Thinking, a holistic strategy framework for organizational culture change. I'm Maya Jabber and have been in the design and build industry for over 20 years in the United States. I started my path to this PhD study to help understand and develop faster strategies to implement environmental, social, and governance foundations into organizations and the communities they affect. Today I will give a brief overview of my study and the artifact I have developed during my path. Today I want to talk about the evolving world economy, critical changes and challenges, and then I will go into my model. First, I will be discussing things from an organizational level, but all that I will be discussing can be associated on other levels for critical thinking and strategy development, such as community, city, state, etc. I think it will be easier to understand on an organizational level, so that's where the discussion will remain in this short presentation. We see everything is evolving in this continuously changing market. Sustainability originated on three pillars: energy, water, and waste management. But it has evolved to take on social governance of all things within an organization. So leaders in the organization have had to solve and take on more responsibilities, such as creating transparency, data sets for analysis, philanthropy development, and policies for governance. It needs to be understood that when we are looking to affect and build strategies for the environmental aspect, we will also need to align the social and governance aspects of the organization as they will affect each other. So my definition of sustainability, and I would like to move away from sustainability to where environmental, social governance, ESG, is the definition we need to start talking about in the current state of economy. As currently within organizations, we are looking at environmental, but we are also looking at social and governance and policies that relate to each other and holistically apply. We will need to manage and mitigate within the holistic strategy development. So then ESG should be, in my opinion, the new term that we need to look into. At this moment in time, ESG is still on the investment level where it is popular, but I believe it needs to come down to the organizational level for them to really understand how to build holistic strategies for bringing together environmental, social, and governance to change organizational behavior and create a long-lasting desired culture. Now we want to look into the critical changes that are happening. I'm going to be talking about these four areas, but also know that when you are looking at these on a holistic strategic level, you need to understand them holistically and understand how to build your strategies within all of them relating to each other and how to build those forward. So that's just the first aspect. But so now looking at the critical changes that are happening, we're looking at an evolving sector that is constant with more information from climate change, rise of social media that is really affecting transparency and the need of it for organizations, and the technology that is there for them to be able to do things better, as well as the technology that is affecting that social media aspect of bringing more information outward. On the sustainability and evolution of it, now it used to be those three pillars that they stood on, but now these leaders need to look at, they become social political activists. Their roles are increasing in what they have to do from their social corporate responsibility and policy making, and of course reporting out. So looking at really collecting all that data and seeing how to build these strategies that are needed to collect all that information for that transparency. Internal drivers that are pushing also the sector is really looking at work-life balance, social equity, branding, and influence. So an example of this is really now we're looking at a large percentage of people within these roles now are looking at diversity and inclusion, building those policies into the organization as well. External drivers are generational thinking, resiliency and health, and regulations. All of these are driving the market and driving organizations to see how they need to do that, within what we have lived through the past year and a half to almost 2 years now within COVID, and how life has changed within that. So an organization needs to be resilient, and how does it transition itself? All of these strategies need to be thought of and done, and really change management and organizational development are key tools to start having that critical thinking and understanding to be able to move forward as well. So some challenges for change that have been faced are lack of leadership vision and comprehension, lack of holistic strategy, leadership challenges, and cultural barriers. So lack of leadership vision and comprehension is when a CEO does not walk the walk or talk the talk of what is being pushed throughout the organization. Here we need to have top down and bottom up management, and making sure that everybody within all those levels believes in that mission and that vision and follows through. Lack of a holistic strategy is when an organization looks at a very linear course of action and does not realize that everything is connected, and a strategy has to be multifold for even just one initiative. Leadership challenges is when these people in these positions do not fully understand organizational development or change management per se. So when they try to implement a lot of these initiatives, and there are silos and other barriers within an organization where there's lack of communication and messaging, and they do not understand that those things have to be also implemented and are connected for them to be implementing their initiatives. Cultural barriers can stem from multiple aspects. Again, we'll go just talk about quickly about an organizational level. On an organizational level, it could be an organization believes this is what their culture is, but everything is siloed, and those silos work very differently and have translated what they are doing into their own culture. So understanding what exists internally and trying to break those barriers within messaging and rebranding internally is an example. So the Integral Design Thinking IDT framework developed through years of research, looking at literature and what other people have done, looking at case studies, and being an action researcher within organizations and seeing what is needed, working with leaders within the industry and interviewing them and collecting data from all of them and their challenges and their methodologies. And the overall framework was developed with design science research methodology, and a 3-step program was designed and developed within that. And initial foundational initials of all of this, of course, is design thinking. So really looking at building empathy, agility, and prototyping, and really seeing how to bringing design thinking into all aspects of the organization, and seeing how all of that works for the implementation of sustainability at a faster rate in an organization. Again, design, as a designer, I come from a design background, from interior design management masters, and so design thinking and design process has been in my DNA, and being able to understand how that works and how to affect people, how to influence people, and how to give people their power to really follow through and be able to do it on their own is a great aspect of design thinking methodologies. So those were all incorporated into the development of the Integral Design Thinking framework. Also developed through my research is a holistic design thinking methodology that is combining design thinking methodology and complex adaptive systems approach. That is a systems thinking approach really focused on sustainability. So combining all of those together as a first step when you enter an organization, and really understanding, you need to understand both the systems of an organization as well as the human-centric portion of it. Design thinking looks to empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test, and where then the systems thinking approach really looks at the systems, the technology available, just how things are done, processes, and all of that kind of stuff together. So in any form of change agent, but especially within sustainability, when you're trying to look at really being able to manage all of these things, you need to really, you're looking at optimizing systems, you're looking at developing better process, you're looking at data analysis and analyzing it on all levels, and then you need to influence, and from where you sit, you need to influence up and you need to influence down. So all of these things, you need to have a holistic understanding of both the human side and the system side of things, and they need to really mesh for you to be able to understand what strategies and where the strategies really need to be built for you to be able to affect change on multiple levels. Integral Design Thinking IDT framework has 6 core imperatives, which means 6 core areas of focus. These 6 core areas are design thinking, communication, community, branding, empathy and speaking the same language, and holistic design thinking methodology. So the more comprehensive things that people understand are communication, community, and branding. These 3 things can go into 3 separate pockets of, all right, how do we fix communication? Here's we need to build community, and we need to really look at branding. So those are just very comprehensive and I think understood. And then really understanding that you need to take design thinking methodologies and then embed it all the way through into the organization. You need to build empathy again, and build it all the way through into the organization. And empathy is really looking at when people are working together and dealing with each other, like understanding where they come from, how they work, and what their needs are. So when you're asking them to do stuff and you're asking those things, you need to be able to tie it back to what their needs are, and you need to be able to, as you are building these initiatives out, to see how to help them also improve or assist them in their workload and what that means to them. Speaking the same language then will really be then when you are looking at branding, communication, all those fronts of when you are approaching people and speaking to them, you need to be able to speak to them in the same language. So when you're speaking to a CEO, you have to speak in some way and be able to tell them about returns and what that means to the organization on that holistic level. And then speaking to people on the ground and what these changes and what is happening is, how is it going to affect them and benefit them as well. So all of those things have to happen, again, in a unison aspect of things, and they need to be working together all the time. And then holistic design thinking methodology of really understanding the systems and the people holistically as you're building these strategies, these holistic strategies out. So here's a visual representation of the Integral Design Thinking IDT framework. So here we can see that community, communication, branding in the green are the core imperatives that can be more understood and measured, and where you can really see their effects. But, and then we see that speaking the same language, empathy, design thinking as well has to be incorporated into each of them. Each of them then works as independent unit, but they all need to work together, and strategies of holistic strategies need to be built in unison for all of that, and true alignments. So all of them can then be working together as these strategies are built and implemented. The IDT Toolbox was created as part of this study to aid in the critical creative thinking process for holistic strategy development. It followed the same path as my overall study of design science research that had 3 steps. Within this first step, it has 2 parts and the rest only have 1. Within the first step, there is an interaction matrix, and this matrix helps within the understanding of the web of connections that need to be developed. Building purpose is also there to help seeing what needs to happen to open minds and hearts, and understanding community and what exists within the organization that needs to be developed and changed. Interventions is within step 2, and that is what needs to happen for those interventions to happen and strategies to be developed. And step 3 is the design value creation, and this is to help see what needs to happen and what steps need to be done for testing, designing, and implementing those interventions that were and strategies that were done. And then, of course, as in any design process, seeing what steps need to be taken for improvement. Here you can see the developed visuals to aid in the implementation of the IDT framework in each discussed step. Again, this is to help in the critical thinking process for holistic strategy development. So some strategies to consider as you are implementing any form of sustainability management or change management initiatives to try to transform people's behaviors. You need to make sure that it is a top-down and bottom-up approach. You need to make sure that it's an integrative design development process. So that really means of bringing multiple stakeholders to the table to really come up and design these initiatives, and making sure that they all have a voice at the table. Unified voice and messaging, so really looking at that, how it is going to be through the integrative design process. You could come up with a unified voice and message to go across the board so that people understand. Align change management with organizational culture and benefits. Be adaptive and allow for evolution. And most importantly, people matter. So it's really about stakeholder, not shareholder focus, and so make sure that the company has that stakeholder focus as it builds its purpose. So this was a brief overview of what Integral Design Thinking IDT framework is and its associated design tools to help within the creative and critical thinking for organizational cultural shifts and behavior change implementation. So with the understanding that organizations, and to the organizations, culture equals how things are done, Integral Design Thinking IDT framework attempts to change the way things are done. So therefore, IDT attempts to develop organizational culture change. Thank you for your time. Please post any questions to this video, and I will try to answer as much as I can within the time allowed. Thank you. If you have any further questions and require more information, please email me at maya@mayajaber.com and check out my website, www.mayajaber.com. Thanks.